So, you think your HOA is bad? Let me tell you about Karen, the iron-fisted president of my neighborhood's homeowners association. This wasn't just about lawn height regulations or the wrong shade of beige on your mailbox. This was a full-blown dictatorship in a polo shirt. When I first moved in, everything seemed fine. The neighborhood was clean, the people were friendly, and the welcome basket from the HOA was a nice touch. But then the notices started. My trash cans were visible from the street for exactly 1 hour too long after pickup. Fine. Then, a warning about my garden gnome. Apparently a non-approved decorative item. Seriously, it was a gnome, not a 10-foot inflatable monster. I started talking to my neighbors. Turns out, everyone had a Karen story. Fines for kids' chalk drawings on the sidewalk. Citations for holiday decorations left up a day too late, and threats for parking a work van in your own driveway overnight. Every story had a common thread. Karen. She seemed to be on a power trip, ruling our little suburban paradise, like her own personal feat. The fines were exorbitant, and nobody knew where the money was actually going. The community pool was constantly under repair, and the playground equipment was rusting away. One day, I got a fine for unauthorized landscape modification. I had planted a single rose bush. A rose bush. That was the last straw. I decided right then and there, I wasn't just going to fight the fine. I was going to take down the whole corrupt system from the inside. My plan was simple. Get elected to the HOA board. The annual meeting was coming up, and there were 2 open seats. I started my campaign, not with posters and slogans, but with conversations. I went door-to-door, not to complain, but to listen. I heard stories of harassment, unfair fines, and a complete lack of transparency. People were scared of Karen. They paid the fines just to make her go away. I told them there was another way. If I got on the board, I promised to demand a full financial audit. Karen, of course, was not pleased. She ran a smear campaign, sending out emails claiming I was a disruptive element who wanted to destroy the neighborhood's character. She even tried to fine me for my own campaign flyers, citing some obscure rule about unsolicited materials. It was ridiculous, but it only made me more determined. The night of the election was tense. The community clubhouse was packed. Karen gave a speech about maintaining property values and order. Then it was my turn. I didn't attack her directly. I just laid out the facts. I talked about the crumbling amenities, the constant fines, and the complete lack of financial transparency. I held up a stack of violation notices from my neighbors with their permission. Of course, I simply asked, is this the community we want to live in? One ruled by fear and intimidation, or one built on trust and cooperation? I finished by repeating my one and only campaign promise, a full, independent audit of the HOS finances. You could feel the mood in the room shift. People were nodding. Whispers turned into murmurs of agreement. When the votes were counted, I had won a seat on the board. So I had another neighbor, a retired accountant named David, who was just as fed up as I was. Karen looked like she'd just swallowed a lemon. She had to sit there and smile as the results were announced, but her eyes were daggers. The game was on. My first board meeting was a masterclass in stonewalling. Karen, as president, controlled the agenda. My motion for an audit was immediately tabled for a future meeting due to time constraints. David's questions about the budget were met with vague answers about ongoing operational costs. Karen and her 2 cronies on the board, a spineless guy named Ted and a woman named Brenda who seemed to worship her, voted down every attempt we made to get information. It was clear that playing by their rules wasn't going to work. We needed a different approach. David and I started our own investigation. We used the state's public records laws to request all the HOA's official documents, including bank statements, contracts, and meeting minutes. The law required them to comply. Karen dragged her feet. Of course, we had to send certified letters and threaten legal action. But eventually, the boxes of documents started arriving at David's house. It was a mountain of paper, but David, the retired accountant, was in his element. He spent weeks poring over every single invoice and bank transfer, creating spreadsheets and following the money. Meanwhile, I focused on the community. I started a neighborhood newsletter and a private social media group. I shared updates on what we were trying to do on the board and the resistance we were facing. I didn't make accusations. I just presented the facts and asked questions. Why was the pool repair contract awarded to a company with no public profile? Why were landscaping fees so high when the common areas were full of weeds? The residents, now feeling empowered, started asking their own questions. The breakthrough came one evening when David called me, his voice electric with excitement. "I found it," he said. "I found where the money's going." It turned out Karen had set up a shell corporation. The company was called Suburban Solutions, and it had been awarded exclusive no-bid contracts for almost everything. Landscaping, pool maintenance, even legal services. The prices were insanely inflated. A $10,000 pool pump repair was billed at $50,000. Mowing the small patch of grass at the entrance was costing us thousands a month. And who was the owner of Suburban Solutions? Karen's Brutherine. It was a classic embezzlement scheme. She was using our HOA dues to enrich her own family, funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars out of our community over the years. We now had the smoking gun, but we had to be smart. A simple accusation at a board meeting would just be our word against hers. We needed to present this in a way that was undeniable. We scheduled a special town hall meeting for the entire community, advertising it as a financial transparency update. Karen couldn't really object without looking suspicious. The night of the town hall, the clubhouse was overflowing. We had people standing in the back and looking in through the windows. David and I had prepared a full presentation with slides. Karen and her cronies sat at the front table, looking smug, probably assuming we had nothing. I started the meeting. "For months," I said, "we've been asking for transparency. Tonight, you're going to get it." David took over. He walked the entire community through the financials, step by step. He showed the invoices from Suburban Solutions. Then he showed the market trade quotes for the same services, which were a fraction of the cost. He showed the company registration documents, linking it directly to Karen's family. With each slide, the room got quieter. You could see the anger building on people's faces. When David finished, there was a stunned silence. Then, all eyes turned to Karen. She was pale, her usual confident smirk completely gone. She started stammering, talking about complex vendor relationships and preferred partners. But no one was buying it. People started shouting questions. "Where's our money, Karen? You've been stealing from us." That's when I made my final move. I made a motion, right then and there, to remove Karen as president for gross financial misconduct, effective immediately. I also motioned to turn over all our findings to the district attorney's office. Ted and Brenda, Karen's allies, looked at the angry mob in front of them and then back at us. Their loyalty evaporated in an instant. They knew which way the wind was blowing. The vote was unanimous. Karen was out. The feeling in that room was incredible. It was a mix of relief, anger, and triumph. We had done it. We had taken our neighborhood back. The aftermath was swift. The DA's office launched a full investigation. Karen and her brother-in-law were eventually charged with fraud and embezzlement. They had to pay back every single cent they stole. Wheat. Interest. We elected a new board with David as president and me as the treasurer. We hired legitimate contractors, fixed the pool, updated the playground, and even had a surplus in the budget for the first time in a decade. We rewrote the HOA bylaws to ensure total transparency and put term limits on all board positions to prevent another Karen from ever taking power to best part. The neighborhood feels like a community again. People aren't afraid of getting a fine for a garden gnome. Instead, we have community barbecues, and our kids' chalk art is celebrated. It took a lot of work, but seeing our neighborhood thrive, free from the grips of a petty tyrant, was the best revenge I could have ever asked for. So if you're dealing with a bad HOA, don't just complain. Get involved. You never know. You might just be the hero your neighborhood needs. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories.